From Clarkston, Michigan, the greatest city in the world, it's the Jose Aliaga Show. Jose Aliaga knows everyone. Get to know him as he interviews some of the most fascinating people from the greater Independence Township area. And now, broadcasting from the studios at Clarkston High School, the home of the state champion Wolves, here's Jose Aliaga.
Welcome to the Jose Aliaga Show. Today we have a special guest, a very conservative, someone that loves our country and cares about our country. His name is David Dudenhoefer. David is the chairman of the 13th District. He's very conservative, and today he's going to tell us more about the Republican Party and the conservative movement. How you doing, David?
How are you, Jose? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, David, you are the chairman of the 13th District. So can you tell us what you guys do?
Well, the 13th District Congressional District Republican Committee is one of 14 congressional districts here in the state of Michigan. Mm-hmm. And our task is to recruit and develop candidates who will implement the Republican platform into public policy.
Okay. So most of them are precinct delegates, or you guys recruit?
We have precinct delegates that make up the committee. Mm-hmm. The precinct delegates are elected every couple of years here in the state of Michigan. Mm-hmm. Anybody can become a precinct delegate. Anybody that's listening and watching out there, you can file every 2 years and file to become a precinct delegate. And then they're elected in the August primary to represent their precinct and represent their values in either the Michigan Republican Party or the Michigan Democrat Party, whichever they choose to serve in. Ultimately, it's precinct delegates who get elected to go to convention. In the conventions, we determined the nominee ultimately for president.
So people then watching right now, and they actually wants to be a precinct delegate or run for precinct delegate for their precinct in their area, they need to go to the clerk office in their township, city, or they need to go to Oakland County?
They can go to either. They can go to their city or township clerk. They can go to the county office and they can file. It's a one-page form called an affidavit of identity. You file, you sign it, submit it after you've notarized it, and your name will be placed on the ballot, just like any other candidate for office. And during the August primary, people in your precinct, in your neighborhood, can vote for you. Once elected, then you're an official member of either the Democrat or Republican Party, whichever you choose to serve in. And then your duties include showing up to a county convention and helping to elect leadership and bringing the message forward. And then that message is carried forward through the national convention, and ultimately precinct delegates that are sent to national convention ultimately have the final say in who the nominee of their party will be.
Good, good. So it's good information up there, because we need more involvement, more people that cares about to participate, you know?
Absolutely.
Because less people participate, that's what we have these sad results from Washington and Michigan. We want to see more conservative involved, for sure. And I want to change a little bit this for talk about the primaries, the presidential primaries. Who's your best candidate right now? Who's the best candidate for you?
For me personally, I like the candidate that espouses the message of returning to the Constitution and following the Constitution and defending the Constitution on behalf of we the people. The people are lacking a voice right now because you have the executive branch, be they from the left or the right, that are essentially running government when it's actually supposed to be we the people. And they're supposed to represent we the people. So the candidate that I like to hear from the most is the message that is in line with that is Rand Paul, Dr. Rand Paul.
So why Rand Paul is the best? Why? Well,
I think he's been consistent ever since he's gotten into office in terms of criticizing and correctly criticizing both the left and the right for policies that are not consistent with the Constitution. And he's been very consistent in his beliefs in terms of holding the government accountable, from anything about ranging from taxation to how we properly go to war. And nobody wants to go to war, of course, but the proper way to go to war is through a declaration of war, not through the executive branch unilaterally. And he understands that.
Good. So, but we see in Rand Paul, still he made into the 8 people is going to be in the next debate. As you know, they exclude 2 candidates already, Huckabee and Christie, which looks like the media is already choosing. Instead, people drop off the race. The media says, we're going to put these people out of the race and keep these 8 people. And Rand Paul he barely makes his A. Do you think he still have a chance to win the primary?
Absolutely. First of all, it's way too early in the process. And the polls that you're seeing are polls of undecided voters. And right now, there's many people who have already decided, and their voices aren't being counted. So the pollsters have been proven wrong election after election. In fact, just this past election, a Tea Party candidate, more of a libertarian-leaning candidate in Kentucky, won the governor's race in Matt Bevin. But the media and the pollsters all predicted that his Democrat challenger, Jack Conway, would win. And of course, it wasn't even close. So the pollsters admitted that they were wrong. The media never admits that they're wrong, and yet they still continue to follow the pollsters and still try to create news from these polls. And so I would argue that people that are listening and watching right now should trust their judgment, trust their instincts, and go out there and vote based on what they believe in and not what they've been steered to believe in.
Good. You know, some people I met the last couple of weeks, they told me the same thing. They told me, we don't believe in polls, but for them the best thermometer is Facebook. They say they go to a page and they see who is the candidate who has more likes. Necessarily doesn't mean there's a vote.
Sure.
But Dr. Ben Carson is the one who has the most likes on Facebook in his page. Do you think that's more accurate poll than the ones that we see on the internet?
I think there's a definite argument to be made for social media. I think that we're seeing a change in the process in terms of how candidates are campaigning. Social media, Twitter, Facebook are all coming to the forefront. And the way of the past in terms of the 3 major networks and the print and television media are certainly playing lesser of a role as people are getting more and more of their news from social media and from the internet, which is why I think that you're starting to see bills being put forward on the federal level of trying to regulate the internet more and more, and people should fight against that. So I definitely agree with that statement. Having said that, you could also make the argument that Rand Paul is getting quite a bit of attention. The video that has been going viral, it's gotten some 22 million hits so far, was the speech that he made on the Senate floor concerning legislators dipping into Social Security to pay for issues that they're dealing with now. And so people care, and there are certain issues that the media are not talking about that the people who are watching deeply care about. And so Rand recognizes that, and he's talking about these issues, as are some of the other candidates as well. But I think that, once again, when we go to polls, we just have to remember that polls can be created and generated in ways that you may not understand. I've never been called by a pollster. I don't know if you've ever been called by a pollster. And I don't know anybody who has. But yet these polls exist, and they seem to sway people's thought process in terms of who they support. So we have to be careful of that, and we have to trust our own instincts.
Yeah, and I believe you're right. Also, the polls can be, it depends what the poll is. This is Michigan polls. If they do the polls in Detroit, obviously the poll is going to show us that the Democrat is winning. But if the poll are in Clarkston, they show that the Republican is winning. But that's not necessarily is the whole state of Michigan, but they call it Michigan poll. Right. Now, I understand that, and good point. Now, the front runner is Donald Trump. And you says you like Dr. Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. So why you don't like Donald Trump? Because I assume you don't like him as a
No, it's
president.
not a question of like or dislike.
Okay.
There's certain qualities that each of these candidates possess that sound likable. It also comes down to record. It also comes down to experience. Some of this actually comes down to, and what's being reflected in the polls now is that people feel is that Perhaps they don't want an insider. Perhaps they want somebody that they feel has worked in the private sector, been on the outside, understands the issue of outside mainstream Americans. But I would argue that Dr. Paul also understands that. You know, he's an ophthalmologist. He's worked in the private sector for most of his life. He's only been involved in politics during that 2010 wave of candidates that came into public office because they were sick and tired of what was going on in government. And so I would argue that he has been consistent, and he is definitely not an insider as people would maybe perhaps falsely portray him as.
Now, if Donald Trump wins the primary, will you support Donald Trump?
I will support the nominee from our party as long as they are willing to uphold the party platform and as long as they are willing to implement the party platform without exception. And what we're seeing and what I complain about, and part of the reason why I was elected, is because there has been too much of a turning of the other cheek by people who call themselves Republicans as other Republican legislators or people in public office are making poor choices and bad votes.
So early before we start this interview, you quote and you says, Jose is a new conservative, neoconservative, and conservative. Can you please explain to people what is the difference between a conservative and neoconservative?
Yeah, the neoconservatives, which most people are perhaps unaware of, are individuals in public service who call themselves Republicans, but their behavior or the manner in which they vote are anything but conservative. In fact, I would argue that they're more mainstream left than they are conservative. And so these are people who I call neoconservatives. And really the Republican Party has been overrun by these neoconservatives. And it's up to the people to get involved and stay engaged in their local politics. This is what I ran on. And I encourage you as you're watching, if you have a complaint about government, especially local government, it's up to you to get involved, and it's up to you to bring your values to the table. The party, no matter Republican or Democrat or whichever party you serve in, is really just a mechanism. It's the sum total of what the people and the members who are involved bring to the table, which is you. So if you get involved, then you can bring your values to the table. And I would argue that the more people who get involved and bring the traditional conservative values rooted in liberty, then you're going to start to see a change in the type of politicians who seek public office, because they will know that the people in the base of their party that they're trying to get the support from are not going to tolerate neoconservative values. They're going to only support traditional conservative values. So there's an old saying in politics, you get the government you deserve. And if the people fall short of getting involved in their government and they allow the money to take control, then this is the type of government that you're going to have. But the more people who get involved and the more people who are engaged, then you're going to start to see a return to the type of representative that we all need and we all deserve. So, who will defend us, the people.
True. It's a good definition, and most people probably miss the point, but that you bring a good point right there. Yeah. Now, Dr. Ben Carson, what do you think about Dr. Ben Carson?
I think that he also has he makes some logical points about where government has been and where it's going. He definitely articulates his positions well. I think that the primary nitpicking that goes on about what he said in a particular book and how true things are, I mean, this is true of politics year after year, and we'll see where he goes in the polls, and we'll see ultimately where he ends up. Definitely he's from my backyard in Detroit. He's a native Detroiter, and that's where I'm from. What he's done is he's contributed to the process. He stepped out of the private sector, recognized a problem, and got involved. And I commend him for that.
And do you think he's a conservative, a real conservative, or he's a neoconservative?
No, I think he truly believes in conservative values. I think he promotes them. I think he articulates them well. Ultimately, if he's the nominee and he promotes those values that I support, then I would support him as well. But it's a long way before we get to that nominee. And I would remind folks that by this time in 2012 and in 2008, the people who were the head of the pack, so to speak, ultimately did not make the nominee. So there's a lot of shuffling to go before we get to that ultimate nominee.
True, but in this election also we have too many candidates. The last one was just by now we have just 4 in 2012 or 2011 was Romney, Santorum, Rand Paul, and then there was Santorum, Romney, Rand Paul, and it was maybe Perry, then drop, and Herman came drop at this point. Yeah, that's it. But now we have 13 right now?
I think choice and competition's a healthy thing.
It is, and it is, and we have, and I believe every time I listen to the debate, I see, wow, we have a really good knowledge right there, good people, good talent, and I think we have very good candidates in comparison to the other side, for sure. But it's my opinion, of course. And then, so you will support either, you think Rand Paul, Trump, or Carson. What about Carly Fiorina? Do you think?
I think so we're not going through each of the candidates.
Yeah, right.
I think that each candidate brings a quality into the discussion. Each candidate has some knowledge and experience in their sort of private sector or political past that they can bring to the table. Each of them recognizes the faults that are going on inside of government right now and the shortcomings of government. Each of them states their case clearly. But I think that I think it comes down to some certain specific issues that people gravitate towards that gets them interested in one particular candidate or another. There's something that one particular candidate's going to say that resonates with a particular voter over another. Doesn't make them any better or any worse than another candidate. They could all say, for example, I'm all for reducing the size of government. And all 10 of them could say that, okay, or 15, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And but each candidate says it in a different way, or comes across in a different manner, and it resonates with somebody over another. In other words, like the way that Rand Paul says it resonates with me, and I see how he votes. With you, it could be Ms. Fiorina. With somebody else, it could be Donald Trump. But ultimately, we have to look at consistencies. We have to look at the political background in terms of experience. If you've been in politics, have you voted consistently? Have you voted to reduce taxes? Have you voted consistent with the Constitution, which is ultimately what we're looking for? Okay? If that record is there, that's a great test. That's a great litmus test for me. And as I said before, with Rand Paul, that is what I have seen. That is what I have heard. It's been consistent, and I'm very happy to support him.
Okay. Now, if we have a November election between Senator Rand Paul against Hillary Clinton, do you think Rand Paul can win November election?
I think not only can he win, I think the polls have been reflecting that consistently from the beginning.
Okay.
Ever since he got involved in the race, there have been hypothetical polls put out head-to-head Rand Paul and Hillary Clinton, and it's been right within the margin of error, if not showing that Dr. Rand Paul's been ahead.
So you think Rand Paul actually can win Ohio, Florida, and Pennsylvania, the swing states?
I think that if he can get his message out, in which he has been, and I think that people hear that message, the message of liberty rings true with everybody. People love to have their liberty preserved. They do not want their individual liberty diminished by any candidate, by any public servant, be they from the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. And they're sick and tired of what they've been getting in government, both from the left and the right, with the exception of very few exceptions. And so we've come to a point in our society and in our time that people are recognizing the direction of government, and they're tired of it. And they want a restoration of the traditions that the Founding Fathers fought, bled, and died for.
True. 75% of the American people don't believe in government anymore. They believe it's corrupt, and we're going to the wrong direction. So, and they're looking for a new solution, a new wave, and I think right now the Republican Party have the answer right now. It's also my opinion. Now, what's wrong with Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think obviously the inconsistencies. You go back into when she was First Lady and during the 90s, there was a whole set of policies that they implemented and that she endorsed. And now she's changing her tune. She'll make the claim that she's evolved, but I think there's a difference between evolution and doing this and seeing which way the political wind is blowing. And I think that's what she's been doing. And she's pandering, as many candidates are guilty of. Look, politics is politics, whether it's Republican or Democrat. To an extent, they all play the game. But I think that she has been playing it for so long, and people really recognize what she's been saying as not being consistent.
So who is the best candidate in the Democrat Party between all those choices? O'Malley, Bernie Sanders?
Oh, I shudder at any of the three, because they truly, because they're talking about promoting ideals that are inconsistent with what our founders believed in, which is that our government should always be focusing on the individual and not a collectivist group. We should always be writing law that promotes the individual liberty of each and every one of us, and not highlighting one group over another. And I think collectivism ultimately is what is going to be our downfall if we continue down this path. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it socialism, communism, whatever you want to call it, but it's all collectivist thinking. We have to get back to embracing individual liberty again, and promoting that and defending that. And I ultimately think people may not be hearing those exact words coming from the talking heads in the media, print media, or their local politicians, but when they hear it articulated, they understand it and it resonates with them. And when that message gets to them, they gravitate towards it consistently. Because ultimately, we all want to be left alone. We want to work, we want to make our money, we want to keep the fruits of our labor, we want to come home, raise our children. We don't want government in our pocketbooks, we don't want them in our bedrooms, we don't want to be fighting endless wars. I think people genuinely want someone who's going to represent those values. And I think ultimately that's what's going to win this election.
It's true, it's true. This is really, and probably I believe most of the people that are watching this today is probably agreeing with what you're saying, and it's basically what I hear all the time when I'm walking around. I hear people sick and tired of Washington. It is true. Now let's go to more local. Let's go to Michigan. So what do you think about the gas tax? Do you agree with we need more money, inflation is too high, I guess we don't collect enough money to repair the roads? What do you think?
I think that once again, government has demonstrated, whether they be Republican or Democrat, that Democrat policies are ruling the state right now. My colleagues in the Republican Party would make the statement that no matter what happens, we want Republicans in charge. I would say that that's an incomplete statement. I think we want Republican policies in charge. And right now we don't have that. Right now we have Democrat policies in charge. I think ultimately people understand that there is plenty enough money being taxed from them right now. It's just a matter of reprioritizing spending. And government is not willing to do that until the people force them to do that. We have to have people who are vigilant, staying involved with their local politicians. They may feel frustrated at the federal level, but where people can have the most influence is at their local level. And that's why I encourage people to become involved with their party and become precinct delegates. But to answer your question, did we need to raise taxes? Absolutely not. They have the money. They do. They just refuse to budget the money. They refuse to do the hard work of budgeting the money. And there are politicians from my own party who promised up and down that they would not raise taxes to fund these roads. And they misled the public, and they ultimately did raise taxes to fund the roads. And so I think you're going to see you're already starting to see a tremendous backlash from that vote. And not just that vote. Medicaid expansion, capitulating with Obamacare, raising taxes on seniors' pensions, doubling the hunting and fishing license here in a state where we're now just coming into hunting season. The carrying on of the Granholm project and funding the government bridge in Detroit. And then just endless creative ways of taxing the public. Last year, a grassroots organization helped stop an idea that Republicans hatched, which was the red light traffic cameras. The ability to be able to install a camera if you're going through a traffic signal and it happens to turn red as you're crossing the signal, they flash your license plate and mail you a ticket, and the burden of proof of your innocence would be on you. I don't expect this from Republican legislators. But people have to remember that the Republican Party, we are seeking to recruit, develop, and support Republican candidates who will uphold the Republican platform and implement those ideas in the platform into public policy. And it's ultimately up to the members of this party and the constituency where those Republicans are serving to hold them accountable. We need accountability inside this party, and that is what we're sorely lacking. There's an old saying, unless you are politically feared, you will never be politically respected. And what I want is for people to be politically respected again, but they have to remain engaged. And it starts from the top all the way down. So do I think that there is an issue deeper than just a matter of voting wrong? I definitely do. I think that there's more of an influence, too much more of an influence of money on our politicians than there was ever intended to be. I think we need to force them to be more responsive to the people, to the voters, and ultimately to the members of the party that they claim to serve. But that's up to us, and that's why I got involved, and that's why I encourage your listeners to get involved. So.
No, it's true, and then I see the last couple elections, I hear lower taxes, less regulations, small government. I hear all the time that, well, we elect these people and then we don't see that. We see the record is the other way around. Right. It's true, and we need more involvement for the people. And I think it's a good point. The precinct delegate is the way to start, and it's just easy, right, to file in the clerk office in the township or Oakland County, and hopefully after today we have more involvement from our community, for sure. In that. Before we finish, we have a minute left. I just want to know, who do you think is going to run for, your best guess, so who's going to be running now for governor for the Republican ticket in the next election?
Well, I think
because I see so many names up there already.
There's obviously been names floated around from the Attorney General to the Lieutenant Governor to the Senate Majority Leader, and I think even Candace Miller's name was mentioned. But ultimately, there could be more people that get involved, and I think more choice means more competition is good for the people. Ultimately, whoever runs, I think people need to first, if they've served in public office before, they need to look at their voting record. They need to be able to do the research and see if their voting record actually matches with their rhetoric. If they've not served in public office before, then they need to listen to what they're saying and pay close attention as to whether or not their views represent the Constitution and the will of the people, or if it's inconsistent. So,
well, thank you, David. Our time is up today, but thank you so much. I know the public today learned a lot. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. I'm glad to have you. Hopefully, I have you again, because I would like to have you maybe close to the primary in Iowa.
Oh, we'd love to come back.
Thank you. Well, thank you, all of you. If you want to be in the Jose Aliaga Show, you can contact us on Facebook. You can tape the Jose Aliaga Show on Facebook, or you can call us at 248-736-7163. Thank you, and God bless you. Bye-bye.